What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew our version 1.0 decklist to the commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic. Well, you know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out the links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But yesterday, we took a look at the Sultai Gonti, and today we're looking at the new Gonti, Gonti Knight Minister. A 4-mana Aetherborn Rogue that says whenever a player casts a spell they don't own, that player makes a treasure, and whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller looks at the top card of that opponent's library and exiles it face down. They may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Mana of any type, and we expect to cast it this way. This is a little bit of a difference, right? Because Gonti, the Salty Gonti, cares only about you hitting your opponents and getting cards. Whereas this Gonti says, hey, anyone who hits one of your opponents can do it. And this is interesting. I think this kind of will help with Gonti. It'll kind of maybe entice your opponents to want to hit other people before you to get some of their cards and to get treasures, right? I'm very intrigued to see how this deck works up against the Sultai Gonti, because I think the Sultai Gonti just gets some extra support in those two extra colors. But I think both of these are really interesting. I think this Gonti still has a bunch of get up for it. So we want to hit our opponents, right? So that we can steal their cards. Things like Changeling Outcast just can't be blocked at all. Dauthi Horror and Dauthi Slayer have Shadow, so they can only be blocked by creatures with Shadow, meaning that they're going to potentially hit in unless our opponents are playing Shadow. And same thing with Dauthi Voidwalker and Dauthi Warlord. Again, just getting in with these creatures with Shadow. Voidwalker adds the next level of things in stopping our opponents from getting things into their graveyard. We get to exile them with Void counters and get to take one of them with the Voidwalker. But there's always look at this. Drawn as a flying first striker in the air. She might be able to hit and buff the rest of our creatures and get in for the purposes of taking a card. Nether Trader has Shadow, rankles in the air, and has haste. Again, can get around in the air and get some fancy abilities off. But not only that, but we can pair it up with Gix, something that can draw us cards. Gix also allows our opponents to do the same thing. If they hit somebody else, they can pay a life and draw a card. Again, could be that thing to just convince our opponents to look elsewhere for a little bit and get their value while we get ours as we're working our board state up. Tormented Soul can't be blocked. Vampire Cutthroat has Skulk. It's going to be blocked by their 1/1s. And then Dauthi Embrace can actually give a creature Shadow, basically to get key creatures that we want in for big damage, depending on what the situation is. But I don't think it's just about hitting our opponents with our creatures and just using regular, our Commander Gonti. I think there's also just other options we can look at. Abyssal Harvester can exile creatures from an opponent's graveyard and make a copy of them for us to use. Brainstealer Dragon, beginning of our end step, exiles the top card of each opponent's library, and we can play them for as long as it's there. And then if a non-land permanent an opponent owns but we control dies or leaves the battle, a non-land permanent an opponent owns but enters under our control, they lose life, go to its mana value. So this really pays off playing our opponent's things, right, dealing out damage. We have the original Gonti, of course we want to play. Whenever it enters, look at the top 4 of an opponent's library, exile one of them and put the rest on the bottom. We can play that card. So again, we get that classic search there. Orochi Soul Reaver can start manifesting cards from players' libraries whenever we hit them. Again, more attackers for us. Rev gives a creature Death Touch whenever we attack. And then if a creature we control hits a player, we get to make a treasure and do the same thing. Seal one off the top. Thieving Amalgam just says during each other player's upkeep, we get to manifest a card from their library, and then whenever a creature we control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 and we gain 2, so it really pays off getting those manifested cards into combat, right, to try to get more Gonti triggers. Thieving Varmet taps for 2 mana that can only be used to cast spells we don't own. Tiny Bones can pick off cards that people discard, and allows us to play them from exile that way. Krolkaw's Heist can go into somebody's hand and pick a card, and if we actually gift the card, we can actually play that and spend mana many types. We can either just get rid of somebody's card in somebody's hand for 2, or give somebody else a card and be able to play it. Heartless Conscription is a fun one-sided board wipe, exiling all creatures. And for each card exiled this way, we could play it from exile, which is pretty cool. Again, commanders are going to go back to the command zone, but basically everything else is going to get exiled and we could play it. Petty Larceny. Let's just look at the top 2 cards of an opponent's library and exile them face down, and we can play them for as long as they remain exiled and get a treasure. It gets to be a little bit cheaper if we've hit somebody with an assassin or our commander. Predator's Hour gives our whole board menace, and then whenever they hit, we get to look at and play that card for as long as it may, that classic just thief ability. And we're just trying to stack it on more and more and more and more. Dream Thief's bandana, similar ability to Gonti, but we get to pick the creature it's equipped to. Court of Lochthwain says at the beginning of our upkeep, we can exile the top card of an opponent's library and play that card for as long as they remain exiled. But for the Monarch, we can choose one exiled with it and play it for free. Cunning Rhetoric, if somebody attacks us, we get to exile the top card and play it. So you can start to see we're really spreading this thieving out across as many things as we can, do as many times as we can, really start extending our hand with what we take. But the difference between this and the Sultai Gonti that we talked about yesterday is because Gonti's making us treasures, we can care about the treasures. And in fact, we really want to lean into it, because if we're going to bother to play our opponent's things and get the treasures, let's pay it off. Disciple of the Vault has everybody lose a life whenever we sacrifice one of our treasures. Lobelia says when it enters the battlefield, look at the top card of each player's library and exile those cards face down. And we can sacrifice a treasure to either play a land playing with it, or everybody loses 2 and we gain 2. Not a bad way, right, over the course of the game to chip off some damage. Marionette Apprentice says whenever another creature or artifact hits the graveyard from our battlefield, each opponent loses a life. So again, every time we're sacking a treasure, they lose 1. Marionette Master, they lose equal to its power, which most times is going to be 4 with its own Fabricate. Mirkwood Bats is going to have each opponent lose a life whenever we make one of those treasures and whenever we sacrifice one of them. Stridehanger Automaton is going to make us a Thopter every time we make a treasure and buffs our Thopters, just giving us a nice board of creatures as we're doing what we already want to do. Agent of the Throne has everybody lose 1 whenever an artifact or creature goes into our graveyard from the battlefield. And then, of course, we're playing in black and we care about treasures, so we're playing that Revel in Riches as an alternate win con to give our opponents the threat of, if we start our turn and we have 10 of our treasures, we win the game. So again, the whole point here is just to pay off the fact that we're getting the treasures, we have them around, and use them for something other than just mana. But of course, that's always the option. But we said it before on the show, and we'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at this Gonti, and I think a lot of the core is there. But the things to learn and testing are, do we have enough of these abilities? Do we need... I didn't put the 3-mana black Nashi in this deck, but it could be an option to extend these style of effects to... get more of them. I think we have plenty, but the truth is, do we want more of them? Hoarding Broodlord was a card I had in the deck for a lot of the process, but I took out because it's just very expensive. I like it, though. When it comes in, search your library for a card, exile it face down, and spells you cast from exile have Convoke. I think it makes sense with some of the other things we have that make tokens, but the truth is I wonder if it's too expensive for us to facilitate in the deck, because at the end of the day, we are trying to play our opponent's things. I'm not sure, but I think it deserves a spot. Same thing with something like Phyrexian Obliterator. I just love something that becomes a real threat to our opponents. We can block and force them to sack a whole bunch of stuff from their board just to be a real threat. The truth is that just stuff like these are options as we go into testing to see, would they help our game plan. But let's get into what we love to do here on the channel and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to determine what the best plays our deck can do. It's to get into game scenarios so we can run through the first few turns of our deck, understand our play lines, and get involved. Here we're keeping a 3-lander with Arcane Signet, Marionette Apprentice, Gix, and a Dauthi Horror. So a good mix in our starting hand. We can work our way up, turn 1 and 2 and get that Arcane Signet down. Again, I love the idea of getting something down sooner that can attack more, but the truth is we need to get somewhere. Wish we didn't draw a 3rd land, so we're going to have to play that Bajuka Bog. We might end up wasting it this turn, but that's okay. Love the idea of something like Gix. The Horror could make sense, right? Being a nice attacking threat for us next turn. Because now we've missed this land drop, but we could get Gonti down, right? Get the Horror in, and get a spell we could potentially cast. Here in turn 5, we missed land again, but we do have Grim Hireling, which can actually get us access to some mana, right? Because now when the Dauthi Horror hits, we're getting treasures, which is huge. Maybe we end up casting this some turn. Maybe we don't. But again, getting the treasures is now going to be huge. Just fund more turns. Now here on turn 6, we've got 5 plus the treasures. Love Rankle as a threat to get into our opponents. The Apprentice could be good this turn, since we might have to stop. Right, we might have to sacrifice a treasure or two. Rankle, if Rankle can get in here, I think I'm willing to just do it right away. Sack the treasure to do it right and get it in. But if it can't, I think I'm more willing to play the Idol of Oblivion, because we know we're going to make a treasure off this Grim Hireling this turn when Douthie Horror gets in and draws a card, and just maybe get access to to more things. Although now we've still got the 5 mana, we could get something like Gix in if we want to. We could still get something like Rankle in if we want to. We could give up a couple treasures to do it, but I think it's still worth it because we'll get some damage in with the Apprentice to do it. And now as we come back to our turn, now hopefully Rankle can be a threat that's going to get in. We have the Douthie Embrace, which can give something Shadow. This could be fun to give something like Gonti Shadow. 1/2 attackers in, more exiled, more treasures, right? I think there's a world where we play the Embrace, give this Shadow, and maybe able to get 3 into different people. Making a ton of treasures, getting a bunch of cards in our hand. And the hope here is that we can use these treasures to fund playing the things that we're stealing and then getting treasures back for it, right? Getting into a fun loop where we can interact with our opponent's things and play our own things. But that feels good for playtest 1, because I think at this point it's going to come down to what we've exiled from our opponents. So let's get into playtest number 2. Keeping a 3-lander with Douthie Voidwalker, Bontu's Monument, a way to reduce our black creature spells, Disciple of the Vault, and the Old Gonti. So not too bad. Turn 1, I think we play the Disciple. Turn 2, we play that Thieving Varmint just to help us on future turns with things in here. Turn 3, I like the Bontu's Monument, especially if we don't draw another creature card. I think it's kind of, or land, it's kind of important. Probably no attacks on the, and it was, we needed it to get the Gonti in. That'll have everybody lose 1 and we'll gain 1 off the Bontu's Monument. If we can attack with the Vault, we do, otherwise we don't. I mean, or attack with the Varmint, if someone's not going to potentially block a Deathstalk Lifelinker. If not, no worries. I mean, we have time. Although now, not drawing another land is killer. We'll get Gonti in and hit somebody for something, and I think I have to do something to, like throwing the Varmint in here to try to exile another card. Again, just trying to get access to some things. Well, there's the Mirkwood Bats. Again, great if we could start making some tokens. So I think we need to get the Voidwalker in. Maybe I probably should have done that last turn instead of regular Gonti. Maybe I switched them so that this can start getting in this turn, right, to get me more exiled. So that's probably a miss there, but still potentially get a couple more exiles in. Jeez, we just keep missing the keep missing the lands. But hopefully, right, our opponents are exiling things like Mana Rocks or something like that we could put down to get treasures, and do that. Otherwise, I think here we just see what our opponents have. If they don't have nothing, we play the Cutthroat, attack, attack, attack maybe here. Again, this helps because we can have extra mana if we're playing things from exile. But again, I think this is another point in the game where what we've exiled from our opponents is going to matter a whole lot more than what we have for the purposes of playing, things from our hand. Let's go into playtest number 3. Again, it's hard to simulate it because the truth is it matters so much what we exile from our opponents. Here, keeping a 2-lander with Soaring, Arcane Signet, Jet Medallion. Again, a great hand because Gonti's going to come down super early. I think it's Soaring, Jet Medallion? Then turn 2, this is an Arcane Signet Gonti. Now we have all this mana, and Gonti's down now that it can start doling out some attacks. Gix is 2 mana right now. We have 3 mana left. Knight of the Vault, and I think just Knight's Whisper. Draw a couple cards, get actually something in. Maybe Gonti takes an attack this turn, and we can get something in. Here, 3, 5, 6 mana, but all our black spells are reduced by 1. Bontu's Monument will do the Warlord, and then Mirkwood Bats. And again, attack in with Gix, attack with the Gonti. Again, just try to get some more things into exile And then again, same thing we said last time. Now now is when we start looking at what we had exiled. And now maybe Mirkwood can get in the air. This has Shadow, so maybe we can get a couple more in this turn. Right. Get access to some different things as we make our decisions on what we're playing and committing to the battlefield. And if not, right, Gix can be drawing us cards. I forgot about that, right? Gix can be drawing us cards as our things are hitting, right, refilling our hand. So again, not a bad board state here as we again just come down to see what our opponents exile. Well, let me know, what do you think of Gonti down in the comment section below. I expect this Gonti to be very popular. I know people love Gonti in general, and I think the reusable Gonti style abilities are just really fun. And again, our opponents hitting each other and being able to get things, I think, is going to be important. I think people are going to really bite on it and probably respond in turn. So this could be really interesting to see what our opponents do with on the tabletop. But let me know, what do you think of Gonti, and I will catch you all on the next one.